When it comes to sectionalism in America during the 19th century, we are basically talking about a difference in economics, social structure, customs, and political values of the South, West, and North. It increased during this time due to the fact that the North was against slavery, they were industrialized and urbanized, and they built prosperous factories. The South was more about their plantation, agriculture with slave labor, and farming. The South had many opportunities to grow economically. It having long hot summers and rich soil near valleys and rivers, it had perfect conditions to grow cotton. It was easier and cheaper to make clothes out of cotton. That's why it became more popular throughout the whole world. But as the cotton production grew, so did the need of slaves. The South was almost 100% a slaveocracy. It was a system that separated the Afro-Americans with everyone else. They had slaves in large plantations, small farms, cities, towns, fields, industries, and even transportation-wise they needed slaves. But not all Southerners owned slaves. The white farmers did not own slaves. They were called the yeoman farmers, which was about 68% of the population. But plantation owners owned many slaves who would have to work on their fields throughout the entire day. The growth of the South's economy attracted the eyes of many who began to immigrate there too. Many diverse groups that came from Europe they came to start new lives and to make more money. As more people immigrated to the South, cities began to grow, but since it's the South, large, heavily populated cities did not rise to those like those of the North.
The yeoman farmers of America's 19th century South were the middling white Southerners who owned few or no slaves, and they played a big role in shaping the South. However, in the early 19th century, hundreds of thousands of farm workers, displaced by modern machines, flocked to the cities and other urban areas. Also, Jefferson's vision of America centered on the agrarian yeoman ideal. He believed that small, independent yeoman farmers were basically the highest level of American self-sufficient virtue and work ethic, and so they should be the ones who were settling the American landscape. It was this and the dream of just more land that drew many people across the country to the West.
Henry, we're going to have to tell them sooner or later.
Yes, and I believe we should do it right now.
Ah! Oliver, stop!
Oliver, Elizabeth, come here, we have something to tell you.
Your father and I have some great news to tell you.
We're moving to the West!
Mama, please tell us you're kidding. What's wrong with here?
We've recently heard from John Ware's son who fought in the War of 1812 that there's a lot more land out west. That means we can have more space and more food.
So, Paul, when are we leaving?
We'll start packing up now and we'll leave right away. The journey will be difficult, but it'll be well worth it. Another source of fuel for this phenomenon was the transportation revolution. In 1794, a private company completed the Philadelphia-Lancaster Turnpike, which would become something world known. Basically, it was a paved highway, and it was similar to some of the good European highways at the time. Then another thing is in 1807, Robert Fulton sent the first commercially successful steamboat from New York City to up the Hudson River to Albany. His boat made the run of 150 miles at about 5 miles per hour, which today obviously sounds terribly slow, but it proved a very efficient vessel at that time. And after that, the use of the steamboat spread rapidly, with steamers making the run from New Orleans as far north as Ohio. By 1830, there were more than 200 steamers on the Mississippi. By the 1820s, basically, steamboats played a vital role in opening up the West.
Since it was much colder in the north, large plantations and cash crops were not very popular. Agriculture was difficult to sustain, and it wasn't helping the nation's economy. Instead, the north grew industrially. The first railroad tracks were laid in the northeast, specifically in Hilliard, Ohio, in 1852. Before that, though, the first steam-powered locomotive was invented in 1804. Little things like the sewing machine were also invented, which affected the lives of regular women throughout the North, and even the South. But the Northeast also did grow crops, especially in states like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. They grew grain crops of corn and wheat. Many new immigrants moved to the North because moving to the South meant that you had to know how to farm. Men could get hired at factories easily and learn the job right then. Most immigrants came from England, Ireland, or Germany. Englishmen who knew how to start factories were forbidden from immigrating to the U.S., but men who did not acquire this knowledge moved and were hired at factories. But with all the new workers came new cultures. Many Americans disliked the sharing of cultures and began a new political party called the Know-Nothings. They wanted to limit the influence of the Irish Catholics and wanted immigration in general to just end. They feared the weakening of American culture. Most immigrants stayed in the northeast port cities, but others did move to the northwest. Europe had famine and revolution, so people just wanted to leave. And America had the reputation of having great economic opportunities, so more people decided to come here.
Oh my, Papa. It's really dirty and there's a lot of buildings.
Yeah, it's the new factories. What they do is they make production a lot faster and more efficient.
Then why aren't there any slaves, Mama? I see so many other types of white men.
Those are the Germans and the Irishmen. They have jobs in the factories, and that's why there are no slaves here.
What was that sound, Papa? Why are all those kids running toward that building?
Well, the sound was a bell, and the building is a school. You see, kids around here receive a lot more education than we did back in the South. Well, let's keep moving. We don't want to miss the train. The introduction of the factory system involved the mechanization of labor, which drew people to the cities. Until late 19th century, it was common to work maybe up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. In 1810, Robert Owen raised the demand for a 10-hour workday, and this revolutionized work hours forever.
In the 19th century, a unique American literary style began to appear. Writers like Edgar Allan Poe and James Fenimore Cooper really revolutionized writing at the time. They started to push the envelope of what was acceptable. Another example of natural literature was Ralph Waldo Emerson's nonfiction book, Nature. He was one of the big players in another cultural reform, which was transcendentalism. Emerson, along with his fellow thinker and friend, Henry David Thoreau, were promoters of the idea of individualism and finding God through nature and observation. The public was influenced by Emerson's lectures and writings, along with the works of his fellow transcendentalists.
Caroline, today at work a friend gave me this new book by Thoreau. It's called Nature.
Oh, that's interesting. What is it about?
It's about this new concept called transcendentalism.
Papa, may I please borrow that book?
Okay, Lizzie, but don't be getting crazy ideas in your head.
I won't, Papa. I won't.
The transcendentalist movement and the beauty of the frontier influenced art in the 19th century. The style of painting changed with every new generation, but it started with Romanticism. The Hudson School of Art, which was founded in 1820, was notable because it was the first art school in America, and it was associated with many famous pieces of art of the era. American architects were attracted to the Greek Revival style because America had become a sort of Athens. After winning independence from Britain, they viewed themselves as a place of democracy, just like Athens.
In the mid-19th century, women began to play public leading roles in life. They not only worked in hospitals, but helped teach in schools for the deaf and mentally ill. For example, women such as Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Stanton organized the Seneca Falls Convention to declare that all men and women are created equal. The family home became a refuge for the harsh realities of the factory, and a place for the women to be mothers and wives. As a way of showing women's rights, some women retained their maiden names. In 1849, for example, Elizabeth Blackwell became the first female to graduate from a medical college.
Oliver, Henry, can you please come help me clean these pots?
But Ma, I'm about to go help Pa in the barn.
Henry?
Caroline, we won't be out long.
Henry, you can't be expecting me to do everything in this house. There are other things I want to do, and I need you to help out.
Ma's right, Papa. We shouldn't be expecting her to do all the work.
Caroline, I'm sorry. It's just that I've got the barn and the animals to keep up.
I won't take it anymore, Henry. I just won't. I talked to Miss Olson in the town schoolhouse, and she's offered me a position. I'm going over there starting tomorrow, and I'll be gone during those days, so you've got to start helping me out more.
Sorry, Ma.
We really should be helping out more.
That's right, we should.
Elizabeth, how was school today? How are your classes going?
It was wonderful, Ma. We learned about this new style called bloomers. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's the new thing. Fanny Kemble from the Times said it's much more maneuverable.
Bloomer sounds like an interesting idea.
Can I use a bedsheet to make some, Ma?
As long as you use a reasonable amount.
Papa, today in school, Miss Olson taught us about Miss Elizabeth Blackwell. She was the first woman to graduate medical school. I want to be just like her.
That's a mighty fine role model to have, Lizzie. If you work hard in your academics, you'll make it one day. Now go finish your studies so you can help Mom.
Oliver, can I borrow your mathematics book?
Lizzie, just go away. I have other things to be doing right now.
Oliver, I really need your help. If I'm going to be like Elizabeth Blackwell, I have to borrow that mathematics book.
Fine, but you better bring it back by tomorrow.
Thank you, I will.
So westward expansion became very popular after Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase. The Manifest Destiny of 1845 also increased the movement towards the west. People believed that God was telling them to expand. They believed that Americans and their institution was more or superior, therefore they were obligated to spread their ideas. After President Polk won the Mexican War in 1848, America stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. California and Oregon had great soil, which meant that there were more opportunities for farmers to start farms and to grow crops. All this land also meant that farmers could just use some land once, and once it was exhausted, they could just move on to the next piece of land that had better new soil. Life on the frontier involved a lot of hard work, though. Men had to build new cabins once they got to new land. Women would have to go out into the field and take care of the family. They would also have to take care of the family. Children were put to work as early as 4 or 5 years old. Education wasn't usually like their top priority, which meant that few kids did go to school. Like they had one teacher who taught all the grades and all the subjects, but but there wasn't a lot of teachers, and it wasn't that popular yet. And as for entertainment and stuff, they just had their neighbors, which some neighbors can be miles away, and once in a while they'd get together for picnics, which wasn't very often. But it definitely wasn't easy moving on to the west, but it made a lot of money, so that a lot of people were very excited to move.
Caroline, thank goodness we're almost done building the house.
It looks amazing, and the land does too.
I know. The wildlife is great, and the food is plentiful, and the foothills are abundantly full of water. I hope it stays this perfect throughout the rest of the year. Farmland in the West was easy to acquire. A new land law in 1820 lowered the minimum price of government land from $1.64 to $1.25 per acre, and the minimum plot size was 160 to 80 acres, basically. So Westerners continued to push for relaxation of these land laws. And under the Preemption Act of 1830, squatters were allowed to take out claims ahead of the government land surveys, and later could get 160 acres at the minimum price of $1.25 per acre. Then, after the 1862 Homestead Act, land could be claimed by merely occupying and improving it.